My name is Malka Mezahav, and I was born in the British Mandate of Palestine. I want to tell you a story from my childhood. I'm talking about 1939 to 1943, just before the War of Independence and the creation of the State of Israel. At this time in history, the British were in cahoots with the Arabs and worked together to block Aliyah into what is now known as Israel. It was a truly terrible time in history. Those making Aliyah were refugees, survivors of the Holocaust. However, Britain policed the borders, sending the survivors back to Germany or Cyprus, leading to death camps. So my father was very involved in the life of Israel, and more specifically Tel Aviv. The British chose my father to be the mayor of southern Tel Aviv. He built a house there in a neighborhood that was predominantly Arab, but we loved one another. They were family to us. All of my extended family on both my mother and father's sides perished in the Holocaust. Since Britain blocked the immigration to Israel, the Jews or Israelis and my father were determined in helping others escape the horror in Germany, Europe, and Poland. They worked on finding ways to get the Jews into the country safely and without being caught by the British. At this time, I was 10 years old. I had 3 brothers, a mom, and a father. Every morning at 2 a.m., my family would wake us up. We knew the drill. We would get out of bed, put on as many layers of clothing as possible, and sneak out to Tel Aviv beaches to wait for the boats of refugees to come near. In complete darkness, my father and his friends would take rowboats out to sea and meet the big boats of refugees. Everything had to be calculated perfectly. There were no lights, no nothing, and nobody discussed what was happening. We knew that if the British were surrounding the whole place, and any refugees caught would be sent back to their deaths. My best friends, who at the time were my Arab neighbors, would ask if what was happening to the Jews in Europe was true. We would say yes, but spoke not a word about the Haganah, which was those of us who brought refugees in. Night after night, my family and I would wake up and go to the beaches waiting for the small boats to reach shore. We would look for someone our size and immediately start dressing them in the extra clothing we had on. We would then all grab hands and dance to the hora in circles right there on the beach. We sang songs, we danced, we laughed, we cried. Now there was a few times when the British caught us, but it was always too late. By the time they saw us, they could not tell who were the Israelis and who were the refugees, because we were all dressed in the same clothing. They would stand there and yell at us at the top of their lungs, "Who are the newcomers? I want to know right now who they are." We would just continue standing there in circles holding hands. Every single one of us would yell, we are, I came, I came." The British had no right to arrest the Israelis, and since they could not tell us apart, they had to let us all go. These nights, they were a lot of fun. There was so much excitement, but at the same time, it was very scary because when my father left, we never knew if he was coming back. 1948 is when the War of Independence began. The UN decided that they would give land to the Arabs and the Israelis. They would live one next to another. However, the Arabs refused. They believed that all of the land was theirs. Now, historically, we know that the Jews were promised the land all the way back since Abraham. The Jews had a commitment to the land. No matter the amount of expulsion that happened to them, there were always communities who stayed. The Arabs began to run away. They left the land. They would come to my father and ask him, "Why do we have to leave?" My father would tell them to stay with us and fight with us. He would tell them they did not have to leave, but they would say that their Arab leaders threatened to kill all who did not leave. They said that when the war was over, they were promised to return and have all of the Jews' land. How did the war break out, you ask? Who started it? Well, once the UN decision was made, 6 Arab countries came together and said it would be a piece of cake to conquer Israel. Once the mission was declared, my brothers and father left the house to fight. I did not know if I was to ever see them again. The majority of them left. However, people from Egypt, Lebanon, and other Arab countries were about to penetrate where we lived in Tel Aviv. My mother, myself, and 3 little kids crawled through the night while bullets flew over our heads. We somehow managed to get to another city and stayed with friends. I never ever forgot those nights. My mom and all of her friends kept hope that God would not desert us and everything would be okay. And that is how we lived our life and still do. We are very optimistic people.